I've always wanted to buy an OLED monitor. A display technology so good that it makes your gaming experiences immersive and your content viewing an absolute pleasure. Well, the caveat is that they're pretty expensive at like $600 to $700 a monitor. But what if there was a monitor that was half the price, but still OLED? This is a $360 OLED monitor. And no, I was not sponsored to do this video. And yes, you heard me right. As of the making of this video, I paid a total of $360 plus shipping and tax for this monitor, and it's OLED. If you're watching this, I'm gonna assume that you already know what an OLED monitor is.
And if you don't know what an OLED is, that is totally okay. I'm here to explain it. An OLED is a display technology where individual pixels light up organically, which leads to amazing contrast and deep inky blacks. Wow. A regular LED monitor like this IPS panel right here uses a backlight, which looks like this when displaying a blank image. Looks disgusting.
Also, your phone is probably using an OLED screen if you're curious. So OLED is not a new technology. And now you're probably wondering what's the big deal about this monitor then? Well, the biggest deal is the price. OLED monitors have been around for quite a few years now, and if you're in the market for them, you would know that they are way too expensive for the average gamer or, you know, the current Gen Z that's trying to enter the job market. It might have been me, you know. I'm not Gen Z actually. Wait, am I Gen Z? OLED monitors in the past, or actually even now, started about $500 to like $1,000 for the more premium ones. And seeing a 1440p 240Hz OLED monitor at $360 is like when budget $70 aluminum keyboards first came into the keyboard scene.
Dude, you can stop right there, man. We know and we can see through your act, okay? You bought this from Taobao and you got it for cheap because your neighbors in China, and you're literally promoting this because you're lowering your social credit. Disgusting.
By the way, that's Nav, my editor. He doesn't know I'm editing this, so it's gonna be pretty funny. This exact OLED monitor is actually on Amazon right now at the same price I bought it from Taobao. So yeah, links in the description if you're interested. So is this OLED monitor even good? Well, that's why I bought one to try it out. Time to unbox this thing. Oh. The cable. So this is using the Chinese head, but I have to change this to the UK one because that's what we use. Best plug in the world. A DisplayPort cable, manuals, monitor base, the stand. And finally, the monitor. Look how thin this is. A benefit of OLED without the backlight is that screens can get really thin. I'm not so sure what this whole big chunky thing at the back is, but I think it's just plastics. And yeah, this is the $360 OLED monitor. Time to test it. So I've been using this monitor for about a week now, and I've been mostly using it for gaming. And I'm going to be comparing the experience of this OLED monitor to my old 165Hz AOC Quad HD IPS monitor. It's basically the same monitor actually, but one's IPS. So here's what I think of this specific monitor. If you have never experienced OLED at this size, and you don't have the budget for the premium OLED monitors in the market, this monitor is for you. It is the whole OLED experience, but now at a price which is actually reasonable for what you get. I think it's a bit too reasonable because my old monitor was basically the same price when I bought it 2 years ago. So getting into the specs of the monitor, this monitor is a 1440p monitor and is capable of 240Hz refresh rate. As for the color spectrum, the factory test that it did, you know, I just referred to the paper, they claim that this monitor can produce 100% of the sRGB color space and 98.7% of the Adobe RGB color space. If you don't know what that means, me neither, but you know, it doesn't really matter, it looks good. Color-wise, I do think the colors are nice. Are they accurate? I'm not sure, but honestly, I didn't really care about it because my videos are not really color accurate. If you're looking for color accuracy, you might need to calibrate this monitor a little bit for yourself, but to be honest, I don't really care. I'm more for the gaming. So the gaming specs. So the response time of this monitor, they claim 0.03 milliseconds. But anything below like half a millisecond or 1 millisecond is fine. As for the display latency, referencing Optimum's video on this monitor panel, this panel managed to get a 2.2 millisecond in display latency, which is really good, by the way. Also, you should check out Optimum's video on this monitor panel as he goes into more in-depth specs of this monitor. Although his monitor is a little different than this one. The monitor I have is a slightly cheaper model of his, which lacks the nicer leg stands and the USB ports at the back, but this model is significantly cheaper. So how does all this specs translate to real-life gaming? I did notice it was easier to track enemies with this monitor, but I don't think it was anything because of the OLED. It's probably because of the jump from 165Hz to 240Hz. So I wouldn't say the improvement was because of OLED, but I do think it could have also been the less ghosting that happens on an OLED monitor because OLED produces less ghosting artifacts. But the biggest benefit of this monitor for me is just how good the games look. Because of the contrast and the perfect black, games like Art Raiders and any environmental games never looked any better. And for me personally, it felt more immersive. It feels like my eyes were being peeled back and the light of the OLED was shining straight into my corneas and I got like the full color of the Adobe RGB 98.7%. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit. But I do like the viewing angles of this monitor. I could be facing the monitor at like 90 degrees and still see the colors perfectly fine, which is something you can't really do on an IPS monitor, although it does have good viewing angles. But don't get me started on VA or TN panel. You know your school's computer lab where you have like old monitors where when you look at the side and it's just like the entire color just flushes out? Yeah, that's probably a TN or VA panel. One thing I never actually expected to like so much on this monitor is viewing content. Things in movies like the black bars that you normally see on monitors are totally blacked out because OLED. And it's not standing out like if you're watching it on an IPS monitor. So consuming content on an OLED monitor is a huge plus. Like, the experience is great. Now let me talk about some stuff that you should take note of this monitor. I wouldn't call them downsides, but you know, to each their own. My monitor came in Chinese. So all the manuals I got in the box were Chinese, and the menu of this monitor itself was Chinese. But it isn't a big problem because let me show you how to navigate to change it.
你刚才买了你的新的电脑，开灯的时候你 realize 是中文，不要怕，我会教你怎么样换去英文。你跟我一起下楼，1、2、3、4，然后去那个 first option。突然你要上去18个楼，找到那个英文的 option， 去按 OK。好了 ，your monitor is now in English.
Another thing to note is that the side bezels on this monitor are significant. They're pretty thick. The bezels are thicker than my old IPS monitor, and when you turn on this OLED monitor, it's even more noticeable because OLED monitors do this thing where they don't actually use the entire panel of pixels. It's weird. This is actually part of a feature called pixel shift, and that leads me to my next note. Getting an OLED means you will go down this rabbit hole of burn-in anxiety. So pixel shifting is meant to minimize that burn-in. So how it works is that the entire picture of the screen actually shifts ever so often, and it takes up a different row of pixels every time it shifts to prevent the burn-in. So OLED monitors technically have a higher resolution than 2160 by 1440, and they are rather about 2640 by 1520. So technically a higher resolution. If you turn off the pixel shifting feature, you will see that the image is centered, but there will still be a row of pixels unused. Also, the experience of using the pixel shift feature where the screen moves around ever so often, a lot of users mentioned that it's not noticeable. For me personally, I do actually see it shift around ever so often, but when it happens, it just feels like my eyes blinked without actually closing my eyelid. It's kind of weird, but it's not obtrusive or annoying, so you're not going to lose a CS match just because of that. You might lose a Valorant match, but that's just because it's a bad game. There are other preventive burn-in features like uniform brightness, pixel refresh, logos prevention, and taskbar dimming, because the taskbar is the most prone area to get burned in. Another thing to note about this monitor is glare. This monitor has a glossy finish, which at certain angles can lead to light reflections and glare on the screen. If you have a window behind your setup or some bright lights that shine directly at your PC, you might see it while you're surfing on a dark screen. Luckily, this monitor does get pretty bright, so in my personal use, I've never actually had any glare issues. But when angling this monitor towards my window, you can clearly see my entire yard and enough information for Rainbow to dox me. The funny thing is that most cheaper monitors actually have a matte coating, so you'll never notice this. But personally, I've never had a problem with that, so it's pretty good. Like I said earlier in the video, I would recommend this monitor to someone who's looking into their first OLED. I would consider it cheap for the amount of specs you get. And if you are from America, it's available on Amazon, which is a big plus because you're not buying off some random AliExpress seller which might not even ship the monitor. But don't expect warranty from this, at least if you buy it from Taobao like me. Even though they claim that there's 3 years of warranty for this monitor, I think the flight ticket or shipping it back to China would cost as much as the new monitor, so, you know, probably not worth redeeming the warranty. But I think 95% of people who get this monitor will love it. I for one have never enjoyed playing art graders this much. I know graphic settings may play an important role of how a game looks on the monitor, but getting an OLED monitor has no extra strain on your PC, so you don't need a better graphics card to run it, and games and movies just look incredible. So if you want to check out this monitor, it will be linked in the description from Taobao and also from Amazon. Hope you enjoyed watching this video, and yeah, subscribe for more random tech finds because, you know, I'm gonna do that more often.